It's Talk Funny, a podcast by Mark Bailey and other comics from all over. We ended up in Japan because we like to hear Mozart's work plagiarized in Japanese commercials. The Talk Funny podcast from Nagoyaradio.com and Nagoyacomedy. Here's Mark Bailey.
And we're back with another edition of Talk Funny. I'm Mark Bailey here with fellow comic Steve Howard.
Hello.
Steve's a writer, and you had some stories about not-so-great contracts or some kind of publishing. What was the problem with the publisher?
Well, so I'd been writing for 18 years, novels, short stories, and I'd gotten short stories published, but I had not successfully published any of my novels. I'd sent them to literary agents, yada, yada. And finally, this small publisher liked a novella I wrote, and they said, "We want to publish you." And, of course, I was ecstatic and excited, and not really knowing anything about signing a contract. I went ahead and signed it. And my book came out. The cover looked great. I got a copy. I started to read through it, and there was over 160 typos and formatting issues. It looked terrible. It looked like an amateur had done it. And so I contacted the publisher right away and politely asked them to fix the typos, which they said they were going to do. And then I got another copy of the book. You know, being in Japan, I have to order the books, and got another copy of the book, and none of the things had been fixed. And then, what was the second? They had sent out, I think, the second printing of my book, and there was a bad review on Amazon, and I read through the review, and the guy's like, the book was pretty good, but somehow another book got printed in the front part of this author's book, and the book was basically arguing that slavery and the Civil War were a good thing or something, which obviously had nothing to do with my book.
Why did you write that?
Yeah, why did I write that? Because I'm from the South. But anyway, again, I, this time I wasn't nice to the publishing company. Can I say their name?
Sure.
Urban Farmhouse Press. If you are a writer, absolutely do not send your books to them because... Oh, and then finally, so I never received my advance, and I know that... at least 100 or so of my books have sold. I've never received any royalties at all. So I'm in a fight with them right now to try to get them, at the very least, to release the rights of my book so I can fix all the typos and the formatting issues and probably self-publish it myself. But just a total nightmare.
I kind of had the same thing when I came here. I started writing for the Alien, and then the Alien changed hands. They sold the rights. I didn't realize I was one of the rights.
Oh, yeah.
As I had my name. My pen name was Sam Rye, and another one was Kent Gullible. And I wrote a bunch of articles, probably over a period of 7 years. And then when they changed hands, changed the name of the magazine, they just published them again. I got paid for the first time, and then the second time they just put it in without even my byline. So this is going on for about 10 years, and people are sending me, "Isn't this your article?" Yeah. And so finally, to their credit, last year I think I went on their public site and I said, "WTF, what's the deal, guys?
Yeah.
At least put my byline. I don't expect to see another dime from this, but at least give credit,
Right.
And that's my thing about comedy. I really do not put up with people stealing jokes at all.
Yeah.
I think even sometimes on chats we'll come up with puns, and I'll point out if something came from Bob Saget or something.
Right.
And there's a difference between attribution, basically kind of a tribute.
Right.
So I will re-quote George Carlin, but I will tell you that George Carlin said it.
Right.
I'm not going to pass it off as my own because it would only take you 20 seconds to figure out it's not mine.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, Paul Simon, if he got up and he did a Joan Baez song, as long as he didn't say it was his song,
Right.
Getting up and passing stuff off as your own is different from paying tribute to a comic, because sometimes it's said so well that I couldn't say it better myself.
Yeah. Well, and I think we've talked about it too. There are occasions where you will come up with pretty much the same joke that somebody else came up with. I mean, it happens, especially like with us, because it's, three of us are middle-aged married guys in Japan, so obviously we're going to occasionally touch on the same themes,
Yeah, I think generally speaking, our premises are going to be very similar, but our comic voice is going to be different.
Right.
Like, I'm in a situation, I'm going to shout about it, and that's not actually your style. So suddenly you start shouting, and suddenly I start talking about Bigfoot. People are like, something's weird, something weird is going on here. Speaking of places to run for your life, I think it's called W5 Agency. Have you dealt with them?
Yeah.
They're actually mobsters.
Yeah.
And when I first got here, they got me a radio commercial job, doing a commercial, and they paid me like 5,000 yen for the thing. And then as I'm walking out, guy who ran the studio said something about where do we send the monthly payments for basically royalties? Because every time that commercial plays, I should be getting a piece of it.
Yeah.
But they were going to give it to the W5 people. And then the W5 people, what they did was they had my passport, and it's like 3 months later, I still haven't gotten paid. And they said, if you want your passport back, stop calling us about getting paid.
Were you dealing with a Russian guy by chance?
I met him, but these were Japanese mobsters
okay.
at the beginning. And I said, I don't think you're allowed to hold my passport. So I just went to a police box down the street from them, and I said, they won't give me my passport back. And the guy said, what's their phone number? And they called him, and he goes, would you mind coming down to the police box and dropping it off? So they said, well, if he stands in front of the police box, we'll hand it to him. They did not want to come in and talk to the cops. There's a lot of seedy people here, and one of them is online, used to terrorize the Nagoya expat community. My strategy is don't shame him, don't fight back with him. He loves to fight back, and just ignore him, and he'll go away. He's a guy that I hired and then I fired. He almost bankrupted my business. He lost taxi ticket, sabotaged a wedding that I arranged for him, and just my nickname for him is Dennis the Menace. And just when I thought I was out of danger, I order Uber Eats one day, and who delivers my food? But this guy. It's like I thought long and hard, should I even eat this sandwich? But then I'm like, oh crap, am I going to have to move? Because now he knows where I live. And this is a guy who, as I mentioned offline, I had a bicycle rental business, and he was walking around going, if you ever need more bicycles, let me know. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure you're not going to buy any. He goes, I could probably find a few. I'm like, yeah, see, the thing is, the cops actually check to see where I got the bicycles. That's not a cliche at all. Gaijin foreigners stealing bicycles.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever thought of that.
No.
And the police would never suspect a foreigner of stealing a bicycle. When I get stopped, even inevitably, I get stopped on my own bicycle by a policeman, and they always say, it turns out they're training the new guy on how to deal with foreigners. But they always say, well, recently there's been a large spat of bicycle thefts. To which I say, really? Because I didn't see that in Japan Times, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN. I didn't see it on any of the networks. Where is this reported, this huge crime wave at bicycle theft? And they'll say, oh, yeah, it's just a lot recently the bicycles have been disappearing. I think if I was going to lead a life of crime, I think selling drugs might pay a little better.
Well, what was the former mayor of Tokyo said something about, when you see a foreigner, you should think criminal, and he made the allegation that most of the crime in Japan is committed by foreigners, and then some foreigner sat down and did the math, and it was like, if foreigners were responsible for most of the crime in Japan, we'd have to commit like 3,000 crimes a day or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, at the time, foreigners constituted at most 1% of the population.
Yeah.
Out of, at that time, must have been 150 million Japanese.
Yeah.
Statistically speaking, it's just impossible. I used to have that all the time where my employer would say, oh, where'd you get that bicycle? Did you steal it?
Yeah.
And I said, where'd you meet your wife? Korea? I would say, look, your average thief, just statistically, is going to be Japanese.
Right. Well, I my first year in Japan, I had my bicycle stolen, and we went to the police station. And the police officer said, he looked at me and he said, "Oh, it was probably a Brazilian that stole it." I was like, "Really? In a little town in this part of Japan, I don't think there's a whole lot of Brazilians running around stealing bicycles."
There was a period in June a few years ago where I got stopped 8 times in 1 month, and I was losing my mind. The logic of the police is just over here is non-existent. And I think one of the times they said, "Do you mind if we just check to make sure it's yours?" I said, "Look, there's katakana is written on the wheel here. Well, what are the odds?" I said, "You know how long it would take me to find another bicycle with katakana written on it? I'd have to actually see the guy park it to know that would have been written in katakana, and maybe he didn't write anything on it." I said, "This is my phone number. Why don't you call it? There's a phone number right here. Call it." He's like, "Well, we're just going to call it in and make sure it's yours." And I said, "How about the guy who just stopped me on the same street yesterday? Could you call him?" He said, "How many times are you guys going to stop me?"
Well, I got stopped. I think I was stopped in Nagoya Station 3 times because apparently I looked Brazilian, but then when I told them I was American, then everything was okay. "Oh, okay, you can go, no problem." I was like, okay, looking Brazilian apparently is a potential crime.
Yeah, I was stopped also in my own neighborhood, and the guy had a phrase book, and the first guy had a Brazilian phrase book, and the other one had a Russian, and they were going, "Fala português, fala português," and I said in Japanese, "I understand what that means, but I don't speak Portuguese." "No, then why do you understand?" I said, "Because I'm a language nerd. It's a long story. We really don't have a lot of time. First the earth cooled." But, and then the other guy is like, "Panivayetie paruski?" And I said, "I know you're speaking Russian, but I'm not Russian." And they're like, "Oh, then how do you understand?" I said, I know you're not going to get this, but in other countries, people understand more than one language. It happens a lot. You recognize that it was Russian, so you must have friends that are Russian. I'm like, no, I don't. Where are your contacts? And like, isn't World War II over? You'll get stopped on your bicycle, and other Japanese are just whizzing by.
Yeah.
And then I'll say, why did you stop me? And they said, well, we're stopping everyone. Really? Because you missed, like, everybody else.
Yeah.
And you stopped me. And I got stopped. I have a bit about it, of course, that I did. What are you doing with an umbrella? I said, well, it's raining. I'm using an umbrella on the bike. You're not allowed to do that. When am I allowed to do it? When it's not raining? When can you see the doctor? When he's not in, like from Catch-22? All right, we're going to wrap this up. This has been Mark Bailey, and we've been here with Steve Howard, and this has been Talk Funny.